It's not a capability problem. One of the biggest misunderstandings is that when things don't move, leaders assume that middle manager need more skills. But I don't think that that's true. I think it's a navigational issue. I think that the issue is realizing that you're in a complex system and logical solutions do not work inside messy human systems.
Welcome to What's Possible, where leadership thrives. I'm Ilene Schaffer, and I'm glad you're here. Behind every powerhouse communicator and relationship builder is a strategic thinker who leads with curiosity. Because of that, we believe that your journey to becoming the best leader starts with you. Have you ever felt caught in the middle of change? Leadership is asking one thing, your team needs another, and somehow you're the one holding it all together. If you now feel seen, this episode is dedicated to you, the person in the middle. I'm excited to be joined by SVC executive coach and professor Adriano Pianecci. What stands out about Adriano is how he brings clarity, compassion, and excitement to the complexity of leading change. We explore what it really means to lead from the middle and his framework to create traction, even when you're not the one in charge. Let's find out what's possible when you step into your ability to make a difference. Adriano Pianecci, welcome to What's Possible.
A real pleasure to be here. And I love the name of this podcast is what I think I do for a living. So thank you very much for inviting me.
It's my favorite coaching question. It's what's possible. And what Adriano and I are going to be talking about today is change, which is one of my favorite areas as we navigate change. And that's exactly the expertise of Adriano. And when we're navigating change, we're constantly thinking about what's possible because we're in new territory, uncertain territory, oftentimes kind of volatile, moving fast. And we do need to think about real quickly what's possible. So it's quite fitting, our theme for today. So before we do dive into that topic, let's let our listeners get a sense of who you are outside of change, outside of doing executive coaching, maybe share a little bit about your teaching, but also just the person behind all of that stuff.
So I jokingly say that I am change because you can hear from my accent that I'm an immigrant. I'm an Italian citizen, a citizen of the United States as well. And a lot of my personal experience has been characterized by being between two different countries, being between 3 or 4 different worlds, nonprofit, for-profit, government, academia, being a director of marketing at one point, and now sitting on the other side. So I would say that change is kind of a natural dimension for me, and one that I have, at a personal level, really embraced as a professional identity at this point.
Excellent. And give us a snippet. What do you do for fun outside of all the work that you do?
I play tennis now that my knee seems to be much better. I had stopped some time ago and take on rowing, which was exciting. But, recently my son is making me play every day. He has learned how to play. And so he's going to college, or I'm trying to enjoy this last time with him. Living together. My daughter also plays tennis. My wife doesn't, but we are planning to teach her so we can do a double and see who is winning between the parents and the kids.
Oh, I love it. Well, and it's so fun. So for our listeners, Adriano is a coach on the SVC team, but sometimes I don't know these things about people unless I ask when we're recording. I didn't know that you love tennis. That is definitely a love of mine. My husband and I we played for years, and then we've taken a hiatus for years. And now you've gotten me just watching your excitement, the energy's coming off the screen. We need to get back into it. So I miss it.
It's so much fun. I mean, it's chess, is moving, is boxing, it's really amazing. And, I have to comfort myself with Italy not going to the World Cup, but Sinner becoming number one in the world. So in tennis. So there are also other reasons why I'm leaning into tennis more heavily these days.
I love it. I love it. Well, and with our topic today of change, one thing I actually did a talk on using tennis as kind of a metaphor for navigating change. And there's so much in tennis that if we
Yes.
really think about it, there are lessons there that if we apply to leadership. And one of my favorite things that we can dive right into is when you are in playing, you are in the moment right then and there. You cannot get focused on the shot that you already hit. Otherwise, you will lose the game. If it was a bad shot and you are thinking, what did I do wrong? Why? If you get stuck there, you will lose the game. Instead, and you can't be thinking 10 shots out. You really need to be thinking, what is next? And I need to do it now. And so I love it for a metaphor for how we navigate change.
Very helpful because it's a navigational metaphor, is about what to do next. And I found that whether it's personal or organizational, it's the one key capacity that from my background, I learned, studied leadership with Professor Ron Heifetz at Harvard. And the idea of learning from what's happening, and in tennis is who is doing what to whom on the field, and trying to understand what that means. I mean, that seems to me probably a central tenet of everything that I teach or learn about change.
Yeah. All right. So let us dive into change. And I know one of the areas that you've said that you really love focusing in on is that kind of that middle person, whether it's a manager, but someone in the middle that doesn't necessarily have the authority.
Yes.
At the same time, they need to be executing. They need to be navigating these uncertain waters. So let's dive into there. And what are some thoughts that you think are really critical for that person?
Well, a lot of this comes from research, and, we have a lot of documentation that proves that when organizational change really worked, middle managers were involved or they were an active part. There is a research that points out that 8 organizational change initiative that involved middle management out of 10 succeed. And we normally hear the opposite statistics when it comes to change. We hear often the one that has been sometime confuted many times, that 70-80% of change doesn't succeed. So with middle managers, the tables are completely turned. And so when I say middle managers, I have to say I talk about myself, because I was myself a middle manager. And I remember what it meant to receive this mandate from the top that didn't make sense and having to explain it to the people at the bottom. And so I remember that tension, and is one of the reasons why I feel that the ability to drive change from the middle can become really a capability that could be easily addressed. And I know that many organizations don't do that. They normally call me in to teach how to overcome resilience and change fatigue from change that have no chance to succeed. And now they are tasked to actually become more resilient, or more flexible, and again, is the middle manager's fault. And I reject that interpretation of.
Yeah. So what would you suggest instead? Like how do we navigate this then? How does, say, somebody in those middle areas navigate it, as well as what might leadership do to help facilitate effective change that's being carried out by that middle person?
So I have to say, in my work, there are 3 key ideas that I think are very important. The first one is that people are simply not taught how to navigate change. So, I mean, it's not an issue of, it's just that you don't know it, and therefore you don't know how to do it. But it's something. Ultimately, however, that doesn't mean that it's a capability problem. So it's not a capability problem. One of the biggest misunderstandings is that when things don't move, leaders assume that middle manager need more skills. But I don't think that that's true. I think it's a navigational issue. I think that the issue is realizing that you're in a complex system and logical solutions do not work inside messy human systems. So that's number one. Number two, momentum comes from how you enter the system. And so I think the leaders often think that their job is to solve problems. But in a complex environment, you have adaptive challenge. And so an adaptive challenge cannot be fixed. You can only make some progress. So understanding that way give you immediately a relief because, as you know very well, middle managers are high achievers. If they don't succeed, they say, oh, it's my fault.
Right.
I am the one that doesn't do it well. And that is, I don't think it's okay because change is not a technical problem. It's an adaptive challenge. As such, is not easily solved. You can make some progress. You can get into that direction of progress, but you cannot solve it once and for all. And then finally, progress is visible movement, not effort. A lot of middle managers, they do a lot of work because they have done the work. They assume that that's it. But doing a lot doesn't mean that things move as a result. So I think that one thing that I often preach is when you're doing change, what is the variable that needs to move? And that you have to measure at the beginning and at the end as that variable moved. Real leadership is about creating visible traction early, even small signal that something is really changing. So I think that is what rebuilds energy, what rebuilds trust, and what builds engagement. Because I'm not strong in convincing people to change. But when you demonstrate traction, people jump in and want to join you. So I think that is also another element that I think could be very important. So again, not a capability problem. Momentum comes from how you enter the system, and then progress is visible moment, is not just effort. You know, those are three ideas that I think have the potential to really change how you see this topic.
Yeah. And so if we're thinking about that demonstrated traction, how does somebody identify that variable that you want to change and demonstrate that there is the movement?
Super interesting. So I give this example. You imagine this super common scenario. Mallory, who cares about people with disabilities, she walks into her boss office and she say, look, I have this training that I want to do for people with disability. And the boss said, yes, great idea, but we don't have the funding. Okay, that's a typical Mallory. I don't know about you. I've been Mallory hundreds of times. So the point is, what did Mallory did wrong? And I think that what she did wrong is, number one, she didn't think about the larger system. Is this training aligned with the moment, the strategic moment of this organization and what we're trying to do? So this is an issue of preparation. She probably didn't walk into her office thinking, who else in this office would love to have this training and could be an ally for me to help me support it? You know, I don't think that is went through Mallory's mind. She just was so excited about doing it that and so finding the power structure that can support you. And then third, Mallory probably thought, I want to do this training this way, my way, instead of maybe asking 2 or 3 other people to help her do it. So this would be co-created. And 3 or 4 other people would have some stake into, and they would talk to other people. And so this would be a little bigger. So as Mallory engaged in involving in participation of others, and finally, as Mallory said, look, we have created one without asking for permission. Here is a 2-module for people with disability. We have already shared it with 20 people and 30 people loved it. So in other words, what I am sharing with you here is Mallory made it very easy for the system to say no.
Yeah.
Very easy for the system to say no. So the work is very concretely is to make it impossible for the system to say no.
Yeah.
So that is really, in a nutshell, what is my thinking about change. Now, we can call it in 300 other ways, but that's really the
well, and it
core.
goes back to your philosophy of preparation, power, participation, and progress.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And if our listeners didn't know already, Adriano is also a professor, which you can tell. I love how you make it in a way that's easy to understand and to see and to visualize, doing it through storytelling versus just talking, if you will. So let's go back. I really am curious about the capability issue versus the adaptability issue, because we do lean towards capability because it's so tangible. It's, oh, if I just learned how to do this, this, and this, or this leader doesn't know how, and then it's check these boxes once you do know how, and then you should be able to manage, you should be able to navigate change, versus, okay, it's not necessarily a lack of capability, but it is that being able to adapt and rise to the challenge and then surf those waters. How do we adapt?
You know, I know what adaptation is from my work, but I think that everybody knows, because we all lived a moment where we have changed something. And the first step is that we have changed our mind on something. You know, I don't know about you, when I've lost 20 pounds, the first thing I have to change my mind is that, you know, eating so much apple pie is not good for you. You know, so it's a simple example, but I think that everything starts from changing your mind, you know, or if not there, on trying some other behavior and see what happens with curiosity. So I think that there is an element of experimentation that is really critical in this process. But the quick answer is, every adaptation, I think it's always a game of what do you give up about the past, what do you keep about the present, and what do you need to embrace that you do not know how to do yet about the future. And I think becoming clear about this dynamic of what to give up in the past, what to keep in the present that is important and shouldn't change, and what needs to be learned and embraced for the future. I think that that's key.
Yeah, I love that. I do a lot of talks on navigating change, and William Bridges is one of my favorite models for change. And in that neutral zone, that's exactly what we want to be doing, is thinking about what are we letting go of? What are we carrying forward? And what's new? What are we bringing in so that we can continue to move, but also being mindful to not let go of what's working. So we don't want to throw out all the dirty bathwater, because there's some, that's not a good analogy. I was going to say there's some clean water in there, but it's hard to have clean water. Yeah, the baby in the bathwater.
I see what you're saying.
It's such a weird saying. Let's keep the baby, throw out the bathwater. And anyway, but that neutral zone is so critical for us to be really thoughtful around what's working, what's not working. And if we go back to our tennis analogy, it's the same thing. You know, you're in a tennis lesson, you're not correcting everything. Some of what you're doing is right. So keep that, and then learn, what do I need to layer on to be even stronger, better, more adaptive?
My coach used to say, I can only teach you two things. Nothing else, because you don't have time to think more than two things when you're playing. So if it's bend your knees, it's bend your knees and turn your shoulder, maybe. But I cannot give you three things, because you will not be doing it. Or it's really about that. And I have to say, this is bring home to me, because I thought many years ago that teaching bridges or teaching Cotter or teaching ATCAR would actually help people. And I realized that most leaders do not need another framework. You know, they need a way to work on something real in their actual environment and start seeing movement, you know. And so once something starts moving, everything changes. It's also for me kind of a way to explain how I arrived to my way of talking and teaching about change, because framework are nice, very helpful, but then the executive is left, okay, now where am I in Qatar? I mean, which one of the steps should I go through? You know what I mean? And you still do not know what to do tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I do love bridges though, because the simplicity. So
Sure.
it
Sure.
is, and it's very intentional. And so
Yes.
it makes you pause if you have that opportunity to pause, because otherwise we continue through change making the same mistakes, or not being where we want to be. So I think simplicity is good when we are trying, as you said, pick one or two things that you're going to
That's right.
focus in on.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then you can move it forward.
And yet, a lot of people criticize Bridges for talking only about the human element. And so for the people that focus more on organizational change, but you're not telling me about how to organize the work.
Yeah.
You're just telling me how to deal with the humans. But how
Well,
about the business? You know?
and I use it in the individual for my individual
Okay.
coaching. Yeah, it's
Okay.
100% for individual, for people in life
Sure,
transitions, midlife
sure.
transitions, etc. You're at 100%. We are aligned. Okay, so let's pretend that our audience and I am a student in your class.
Oh my gosh.
If you were to think of, during the course of a semester or a quarter or however long the course is, the one thing that is the most essential that we leave your class knowing, understanding, and having every cell in our body feel it, what would that be?
That leader don't get stuck because they're not good enough.
Mhm.
Number one thing. They get stuck because they're trying to move something meaningful in a system that is not designed for it. So I think that this would be probably it, because there is a lot of guilt tripping going on. People with, especially professor, they come to you and tell you what you're doing wrong and what you need to learn and all the things that would be better. But the truth is, many of my colleagues have not spent an hour on a chair of a middle managers, of a directors. And so as a practitioner, I appreciate the fact that the one person had real experience in this. I think it's really important. And, again, people don't get stuck because they're not good. They get stuck because they're trying to move something that is very meaningful, often for them themselves, in a system that is not designed for that. And so I think that is really important to realize.
And so what does somebody do in that system that's not designed for it?
For example, stop grandstanding on talking about change in celebratory way and start understanding that change, sometimes it's a loss for people.
Mm,
And so realizing that even your best idea, which you think is the best since sliced bread, is an idea that will cause some disruption. And so this concept that we've been sold for many years of, continuous change, continuous improvement, and change should be disruptive, it's really has been detrimental to people's mental health
yeah.
many, many years. And so I am all for meaningful change.
Yeah.
I think that when I say that people love change, what I mean is that, something that I've learned from Ron Eifetz is that, you don't give up a lottery ticket. And that's a major change in your life. You don't give up a new car. That's a major change in your life. But, what people hate about change is the loss portion of it. So people love change when change is
A
bringing
win.
something important. That's right. That's right. I'm going through all the trouble of reorganize my life when I'm getting married because it's worthwhile marrying this person. So I think that kind of change people welcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And let's say a manager is listening, or even a senior leader in an organization where they are trying to implement what they do consider is meaningful, purposeful, needed change. And the system is it's a systemic issue that is not going to change. The environment is not set up to embrace this change.
Yes.
Any thoughts? Is it that the leader needs to just change their mind on change, or leave the organization, look for an organization where perhaps they are able to either create that meaningful change, or maybe that a new system is already set up for it? I'm just curious what you do, because you don't want to keep banging your head against a wall. So
No,
what
not
are
at
the
all.
options?
Not at all. So preparation is misunderstood. Preparation for change is sorely misunderstood. People think the preparation is planning.
Mm-hmm.
But preparation is not planning. Preparation for change, the first P, and so the first move, is not really that. Preparation is having kind of understanding the system before you move, is understanding what you're trying to change. Most people prepare for the work. Very few prepare for the system.
Yeah.
So it's about foresight. It's about seeing the terrain before you take the first step. Some people think the preparation is having the plan, having the project plan and the dates and the milestone lined up. That's fantasy thinking, because that's thinking the readiness is about the plan. But preparation means, does this organization is ready? Are they capable? Are they willing? There is a budget. What is the scope of what we're trying to do? Do I believe that change should happen because my boss told me? Did I verify that? Is there any cover to this? What is this issue aligned with the larger strategic thrust of the organization? So as you can see, preparation is very, very important. And it's a part also in which you address, do I have the political capital to move this forward? And a lot of people don't do that. The leaders should prepare like strategists, not like administrators.
Yeah.
I don't just need to have the Excel spreadsheet from launching. Now, having said that, I embrace this contradiction fully. You don't need to start when you're ready. I think that you should start, see how the system reacts, and that make you learn something. But I'm talking, of course, about an experiment that doesn't cost you your job. So I'm talking about minimal action. So that's the first thing. The second part is the issue of power. Some people don't embrace that power. But the truth is, you need to know that influence open door during change. And so you need to map the power, understand who is with you, who is against you, what argument will bring you on my side, how do you pitch that, and what will actually make somebody say yes to you rather than no. And is their yes real, or is a yes that is not real? Yeah. So that is as far as power. As far as participation, I mean, you know this very well. I hate PowerPoint. People think that you are inspiring people with PowerPoint and cookies. I mean, this needs to stop. You know what I mean? I mean, there are many other structures today, like liberating structure, open space, World Cafe. There are many other ways today to join people in co-creation that is real. That is not, look at my beautiful colored slide, and the cookies are very good. That's not participation. And people do it all the time. And then progress. Nobody starts from a variable that they want to change, and they keep monitoring. They're going to tell you, we did 25 training. I don't care. How is the knowledge increased as a result, as the customer service increased? That is what I want to focus on. So to answer quickly your question, I would ask those questions. I would ask, I want to prepare like a strategist. I want to look at power like what is my level of political capital and alliances that I have? Am I able to bring people towards a vision that is crisp enough and clear, and people co-create? And then what variable would measure progress?
Yeah. Love it. I'm glad that we're now on YouTube because you have so much joy when you talk about this. I can't wait for our YouTube watchers to see the joy that comes out. And I would imagine our listeners can also just hear it in your voice. One thing that keeps coming to mind, going back to the whole tennis thing, with it's know the territory as part of your preparation. And
Yes.
it makes me think of playing doubles. I had this habit, which of course any tennis player listeners are going to be cringing when I say this. My poor partner would be up at the net and I'd inevitably hit it to the net person on the other side and then they'd slam it down my partner's throat. And the coach kept saying, Ilene, do not hit it to the people at the net. You need to know the court and hit it where the ball belongs, which is not at the net person in an
Yeah.
area where, and that's part of what I hear you saying with preparation. It's like know the court, know what the territory is, and know where you might hit a winning shot versus going after something that is going to end up getting slammed down your throat. So I had that visual as you were talking. So my last question before we do our typical follow-up questions is, what has changed for you around your thinking about change?
So I used to be much more structured, uh, and much more, in a sense, married, because a lot of this work comes from my personal experience in doing organizational change initiatives, software implementation, cultural change, or reorganization, and so I mapped what happened to me as I was doing those. And, we started our conversation some time ago with the Changemaker Atlas, which I mentioned to you. And what it was a kind of an attempt to write down jokingly in a real map about what are situations that I've lived in my life as I have been managing change. And so out of those situations, those four different areas have emerged, the one we've been talking
Mm,
today. But I have to say that what has changed for me is the realization is that uh, not all of us need to work on all those areas. There are some people that needs to focus on power, for example, because that's a
yeah,
blind spot of them, and they don't need, a heavy work on the other areas. But,
yeah.
normally there is always one or two areas that one is a little weaker, is like
Hmm.
serving or the backhand or the forehand. So I don't
Hmm.
think that there are 35 areas that you need to change, but I think that focusing on just one can bring a lot of change to the way you handle this kind of work.
So, what would you hope is the big takeaway? And that might be it for our listeners based on our conversation today. One big takeaway.
The people love change when is managed this way. And I want to say this at the risk of appearing overly idealistic, but there is a lot of bad rep about change today because people actually complain from too much. And so
Yeah.
there is what we call change fatigue. So
Hmm.
change is now normally being associated with too much change. And so
Yeah.
what I'm here to say is that I would like for people to regain some idealism around what's possible when people come together.
Yeah.
And I think that you beat burnout when you start loving your job again, when you start believing that change is possible again. So I think that, in a sense, this is also an antidote for burnout. Start believing again that you can make some difference. There is some work that I do in organization where there is a lot of cynicism. I call it the 15% change, and is the change that you can start today without asking for more money, where you just have to redistribute your own discretionary time. And you don't need to ask for permission. You can start now. It's not 100% change. It could be every change, but you have some control over an area. And maybe that's where you should be focusing on. And start there and see what happens, what you learn, and then extend it. 15% change would be my key takeaway. You can change something today if you just redistribute that discretion.
Okay, so you basically answered all of my follow-up questions in that one so beautifully. I'm going to ditch the other ones, and then I'm just going to ask you, is there
Please.
anything that I did not ask you about change that you wish that I did?
Yeah, I mean, for example, what kind of change situation do not, this model or this way, my way of thinking does not cover?
Great question. Answer it.
I would say that, this is not a model for personal change. It's more an understanding for when you're trying to make something happen in a group. So, for example, one of the way that I use it is not even mentioning the word change. If you have a project that is stuck, chances are that one of those elements has not been taken care. Could be that you didn't talk with the boss. Could be that you didn't consider what does success look like. Could be that you didn't involve enough people. Could be that you didn't understood this project in the larger moment of the organization today. But I guarantee you that using this can help you move forward. In fact, I often talk about being unstuck, that this is an antidote when you're trying to make something happen and for some reason what you're doing is stuck. But it's not about personal change. That's what would be the short answer. This is not a model about how change happen personally. This is a model about how things work in a larger system.
Yeah. I love it. And again, for the individual personal change, I do recommend William Bridges' book on transition, but that one maybe not so much for organizational change. We'll use Adriano's model for that. All right. And for our listeners, if you are navigating change, you are trying to drive change in an organization, you are feeling stuck, let us know. We would love to set you up with a consult with Adriano and see if perhaps we can help you get unstuck. Thank you for joining us on What's Possible.
A real pleasure, real pleasure.